Welcome to our podcast, everyone. My name is David Alexander Cantu, and I'm here with Dave again for our deep dives. And today we have an amazing conversation planned. We're going to talk about perfectionism and how perfectionism can be the enemy of progress, how it can actually sabotage our efforts. And so before we dive in, David, how are you doing today?
Oh, my man, I am doing great today. It's Friday, work week's done, having a great conversation with who could ask for anything else, man. How you doing today as well?
I'm doing awesome. I'm doing awesome. It's you're growing every single day, dreaming, and it's the path forward. First of all, let's dive deep into this idea of perfectionism. Well, how do you see perfectionism as it relates to self-improvement, business, learning? Is it an issue?
Perfectionism, I believe, can be a very sharp double-edged sword because first off, it is a great motivator because, of course, we've heard the coined phrase, nobody's perfect, which implies, I guess, someone should be perfect, which gives us motivation to fix what may need to be fixed, whether it be in our businesses, whether it be in our lives, whether it be in our relationships, anything like that. However, the other side to that is I think a lot of times the concept of perfectionism can be almost a curse to you because it almost puts blinders on you to where you see an abstract idea as perfect and anything less or to the side of that or anything Protestant to that view can be seen as bad and you almost discriminate against it right away. So I think the idea, it is a good carrot to hang in front of you to guide you. But I think to embrace perfectionism as your personal utopia is going to cut out so many instances of being able to learn, being able to grow, or being able to diverge in ways that you may not have thought to diverge before.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, no, it's true. And the thing is, I've been analyzing this issue a lot. And perfectionism can create this fear of failure, right? Which is paralyzing. When we strive for perfection, sometimes it paralyzes us. And there's this intense fear of failure. And therefore, we don't take the necessary risks, right? So we don't want to make mistakes. We feel, self-conscious or, we're just embarrassed. And so we don't even take that risk that is required in any endeavor. And so I'm really battling with this because I think in our society, a lot of successful people, a lot of people with high standards are thrown to perfection or to at least to the pursuit of perfection. And like you said, it keeps you going, keeps you moving forward, but it can also paralyze. So have you dealt with perfectionism in the past as a student, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur? Tell us about that.
Me and perfectionism have had quite the dance over the years. And because I think, once again, in a very abstract way, striving towards perfection versus the idea of perfectionism can be two very different playing fields here. And a lot of times, and I think you would feel the same way about this, given our backgrounds, where we grew up and things like that, I think perfectionism was almost instilled in us unknowingly, where you are reminded that this is good, but not great, but not perfect. And you're a lot of times, especially in American society, you point your finger and say, that's perfect. That person is perfect. That lifestyle is perfect. That business is perfect. And in doing so, maybe the person you're pointing at saying that's perfect, I don't know if they would be the person saying, I'm perfect. Because it almost creates a philosophical paradox, doesn't it? Uh, because if you're perfect, then you're done. You've hit the end. Congratulations. They all lived happily ever after. The end of history, right? I think a lot of times said, in American culture, you're almost a product of the perfectionist theology, if you will. And you've actually seen other cultures strive to actually combat perfection, which I've always found to be very fascinating. Things I didn't learn about until I was over here and outside of the bubble a little bit. So if you look at the Eastern beliefs of wabi sabi, which is the idea of perfection through imperfection, because imperfection creates authenticity, which means that by being authentic, you are more perfect than perfect, which I can really appreciate. And the last point will be go up to the north, up into Norway, Sweden. They have this thing called jantelagen, which is the law of Jante, which is actually a demonization of perfection and an embracing of the normality of the group as opposed to the individual. So it's interesting that as Americans, we've made almost a religion around the idea of perfection. And I think a lot of times we don't give enough credit to what, as I said, to both sides of it. So the fact is you can strive for perfection as a motivator, but when you embrace perfectionism, it can be very difficult. And you go through that through school. You could possibly go through that with family life. You can go through that with your jobs and things of that nature. So I think this is something that we can all find very relatable. However, I do think this conversation is great because I think if it is a theology, we can speak some heresy about it to maybe find that there is better things to find in the world than this idyllic utopia of perfect.
Exactly. And I think at the root of all of this are these unattainable standards. And it reminds me, when I grew up in Mexico City, I went to a French school. I studied in a French international school, and a perfect grade didn't exist. Everything was over 20. So 20 was 100%, but nobody ever got a 20. And the idea behind that was that human beings were not perfect. So by putting this standard, oh wow, perfect score. No, you can write something and it can be beautiful, but you never achieve that state of perfection where there's nothing that you can do to grow, because we're growing beings. And even if you make $1 trillion tomorrow, you could hypothetically make more. Even if we grow and we develop professionally, intellectually, in whatever arena, there's always room for growth. And so this idea of perfection, it's almost this, you have to attain. Once we get there, there's nowhere to go. So it's like a wall that we hit, and rather than just growth, just infinite growth, there's limitless potential that we all have. And just the focus is just a little bit better. I will try to speak a little bit better. I'll try to teach a little bit better. I'll try to run my business 1% better tomorrow, but that compounded, over time can make a huge difference. So yeah, I like this idea that you previously shared about this notion. You're perfect. We are all perfect. We are, but like you said, we're perfect in our imperfections. And the next thing, when we're trying to build a business, what are the things that we think should be perfect and that might not be, or that will never be? So what are the areas that we think that we need to be perfect in? And also the next thing is, how can we combat that and how can we move forward?
That is a very integral part of, I would say, if you have the entrepreneurial spirits and you've never started a business before, or if you're thinking of starting a business, maybe listen to the last podcast we made and you got real inspired to start hustling, start moving. The first phase of you building your business is, if this is your first business, is almost purely ego driven. And that ego is going towards some sort of perfect entity, because in your mind, you have the perfect business. In your mind, this is the $1 million idea. This is the one that's going to put you on the map. This is the one that's going to get you on a yacht right next to Elon's. This is that, in your mind, that's the idea. And I've worked with dozens of entrepreneurs. I've worked with tons of business owners, and that ego gets humbled real quickly when you start your business, when you start moving forward, because you think it's going to take off like a shot. You assume that everyone in the world thinks like you, and that this idea you have is something that they've just been sitting around waiting for. When, in all honestly, most of the time, it doesn't work in that fashion. And suddenly, your ego balloon is popped. And a lot of that ties into perfection, because suddenly you have this dawning that maybe this idea isn't perfect. And that starts your slope back downwards, right? Because you're building your ego. You have a very uninformed optimism carrying you up this hill. And then when you become informed, it becomes very pessimistic, because suddenly you start seeing the holes in your idea, in your product, the same way as other people in the market. And that happens with almost every single business. It happened with my businesses. It's probably happened with your businesses, Dave. And it's happened with a lot of businesses I've worked with. But the sweet spot is turning that bottom part upward back into informed optimism. And that is where you approach your business a little bit more humbled. And I think that is where you separate the successful businesses from those that kind of crash and burn out. Because perfectionism can be a poison when you hit that informed pessimism. When you're going down that hill, you can say, if it's not perfect, it's not worth having. Then I'm going to have to go back and think of something else. But if you take that and say, hey, I don't have the horse blinders on, this can be whatever it wants. Viagra started as blood medication. And suddenly the scientists noticed that different things were happening to the patients who took it. And they said, you know what? Let's repackage this. Let's do something new. Case in point, it definitely is a major factor of the first phases of the starting a business, getting into entrepreneurialism. And let me serve this back to you, actually, because that was my approach to it. And I did ask you your thoughts on it. Perfectionism in your entrepreneurial efforts. Tell me, what was your relationship like in the good old days, in the beginning?
Right. Yeah. In the beginning, it's a roller coaster ride because it never ends. You were saying the idea, the business idea that's perfect in your mind. It works. You're set. And I was like, okay, I'm going to teach business English. That's what I do in Czech Republic. I'm from Texas. I studied business. Like that's my calling. But my girlfriend told me, you're multilingual. You speak Spanish and French. You're certified to teach Spanish and French as well. You have so much more to offer than that. And so I was open to the idea, and I love feedback, getting different perspectives on things. So that was when I really switched. I said, okay, I might spread myself too thin a little bit, try and do all these different things. I'm building a personal brand, which is this multilingual persona that switches back and forth between different languages, fluent and native, in English, Spanish, and French. And I share that love for learning, that love for languages. And so that was my first step, right? I said, oh, wow. Okay, I need to be a little bit more flexible in my approach and to maximize my talents and to set myself apart. But along the way, especially when it comes to content creation, there's a constant struggle because I picture this perfect TikTok, this perfect video that's going to go viral. And there's actually a certain paralysis, a certain lack of swift decision making, right? Because I'm masterminding, I'm thinking about it too much. I'm trying to create the perfect, oh no, the music is this. Oh, I need to dress differently instead of just taking action and execute on the idea. What brings a lot of consolation to me is that the world actually right now, authenticity is becoming more relevant and more attractive rather than perfection. And you see this in the algorithms and the content where people who are waking up in the morning, their hair's all messed up and they're stuttering and they're like, hey guys, I'm here. I just woke up. Those people and those videos touch the human side of the audience. And people want to relate. People want something that's authentic. And so right now, I think perfectionism is, and this pursuit of perfection is actually changing. It's turning around. And so, yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit about the idea of what's, as a business owner, as we talk about TEFLPros and everything, how do you see growth in your business? And how do you approach this kind of growth centric kind of journey?
Oh, yes. To be a successful entrepreneur, you need to be always growing. The second you plateau, especially in this day and age when so many more people are getting into it, maybe this might have worked. You could have maybe set it and forget it, the 90s or the 80s with a business idea. But because the market is so saturated, because there are, like I said, just more people are getting into an entrepreneurial mind state and starting similar style businesses, you're in a constant state of competition. And the only way you are going to be able to compete is to grow. All right. Because it's not about just selling more units of whatever it is. It's about being able to diversify and to grow. And going back to how we started this, the idea of a perfect model is going to limit that. My personal way, and I know some people are very different. I know some people are very just gung ho about trying new things and seeing how they do. They just have things out there and see how people take it. I'm a little bit more conservative. In that way, I'm actually, with most of my businesses, I'm more reactive, where I will have my product. And while I'm moving my product, I will make sure that I am discussing with my clientele, with those who are using it, just saying, what do you like? What do you don't like? What do you need? What do you need? I always ask that. What do you need during the course? What do you need after the course? What do you need before the course? And because they say, what about this? What about that? You're actually getting a really good market pool of ideas. And when you start hearing the same thing over and over and over again, to me, at least, that's the knock on the door. That's saying, all right, here you go. Here's your idea. So with TEFLPros, for example, and this is a great segue to this, actually, we had a regular TEFL course. And the TEFLPros course has actually been around for about 8 years now. However, now that I own it and I'm obviously working a lot closer with the people, I say from my perspective as an ESL teacher, as a teacher who lives abroad, what did I need? What did I need to help make this course worthwhile afterwards? Because you can get a PhD, but if no one's going to give you work with that PhD, great, you're going to be doctor starving. The idea is that I designed what's called the Teacher's Garden, which is where we grow the teachers. And that works as a supplement to the course where you can take more courses. You can engage in discussions. We have weekly forums. We have job postings from jobs that are vetted by the company. So these are people who pay proper salaries, people who will work you, whether it's online or whether you want to move somewhere around the world. We have all of those in the Teacher's Garden because that's what the teachers need afterwards. That once you graduate, you are certified, you need to keep going. You need to keep moving and growing as a teacher. So we're just more or less giving you a little bit of a ladder. We're giving you something to climb, something to grow with. And I do believe that in entrepreneurship, growth, you cannot be the same company 2 years in a row. That's how intense it is now. My visa agency, there's something new about us every single year. There is something new we offer, something new that we cater to. And with the TEFL school, with TEFLPros, it's going to be the same exact way. There's always going to be something new coming on there because if you just taper off, that means you've stopped listening. You've stopped listening to the market because once again, perfection cannot be achieved. And if you think of it, that it's just pure ego, and ego will ruin companies, as we've seen. So let me ask you in regards to growth. I don't want to just ask the same question that you asked me. But what are some actual examples that you have grown within your entrepreneurial life, or maybe even growing into the entrepreneurial life? How is that? What has that journey been like for you?
Oh yeah. Of course, I wanted to relate that to something very interesting that you said about the product. So, of course, I'm a teacher and I focus on the student, but in a way, from a business standpoint, I'm the product. This is my personal brand. And so focusing on, in a way, myself on the product, on being as authentic as possible and to serve, to always be a better servant to my community and to my students, because that's the growing, becoming a better teacher and to be able to motivate, inspire my community and my students. And so I see myself in a way as a product. And in a way, it's perfect place to be right now because with AI and with robotics and with technology where it is, they'll be able to automate a lot of the skills like coding, for example, or programming. All these things will be replaced. But what's the one thing that can't be replaced? It's you and me and us, the person itself. And in a way, we're in a very fortunate position because we are irreplaceable. And so growing as a person, growing as a teacher, and most importantly, as a servant to be able to empower my students and my community to the fullest of my capability. So it's not about me making more money. It's not about me becoming famous. It's about, can I get better results for my students? And that's my only focus. And I know that if I can do that, if I can open the doors of success, if I can inspire and motivate my audience and my students as well, of course, then I know that I'm doing a good job. And yeah, that's how I see growth. I see it as this dedication to be able to give as much as possible, to be able to give everything. Because there's always a sense, I don't know if you've ever felt it, but we have so much to give. We have so much to offer. We want to give more. And I want to give more and more. And sometimes I feel like I'm not giving enough. Have you ever felt that? Have you ever felt that there's so much more to give and that we're not reaching our potential?
I can definitely relate. I do think because once again, it goes back to that what is perfect, what isn't. And I think also when it comes to whether you think you're not giving enough or whether you think that you have more to give, I think those are two actually very different platforms. Because I think we both give very plenty, but I also think that, yeah, we can give more. So needing more also doesn't really potentially relate to not enough. And that's where the growth comes in. And that's where, like I said, I'm very reactionary. So I'm not exactly clawing at saying, quick, I need to offer something else. I need to give something else. I am more or less huddled behind my colleagues and waiting for them to essentially just report back on their surroundings, their ecosystem, because they're the ones new. We've been sitting in it for quite some time right now. Yeah. And of course, as once we start becoming old timers, what do? We start saying, well, it's not as good as it used to be. And this was the golden age. This is the golden age. The golden age is always behind us. It was never, we didn't sit around in like the 90s saying, wow, this is pretty golden. What do? We complained about that it wasn't the 80s. You look at it very retrospectively. So when it comes to growth, you have to be also very disciplined when it comes to being an entrepreneur, when it comes to being a business person. And if you have that discipline, you will know when it's time to give, when that moment is. And a lot of times it will come to you. It'll show up at your doorstep. You don't have to stare at your reflection in a lake until something pops up there. It'll come to you in the form of someone asking you if you offer this, or someone saying, it would be great if you had that. And you would say, maybe that would be a good idea. And maybe it won't be. Maybe it'll be an idea that'll work for a while and then suddenly it'll be nowhere. I don't know. Do you remember when McDonald's had fajitas? Remember that back in the 90s? Loved them. I preferred the fajitas as a kid over the burgers.
Were they better than Taco Bell?
I don't think Taco Bell existed at the same time as McDonald's fajitas. However, though, yeah, I think as a businessman, you have to be ready to give more. Yeah. Because that goes back to what I previously said about tapering off. You have to be ready to give more because you need to be able to diversify, and to grow means to give more. That's the idea. And you can't be afraid of that. And you sure as hell can't sit on your butt and say, this is good. I'll take it as it is, because you'll start depreciating. You will start, and someone else is going to come along and take your idea right from underneath you, and they'll do the growing for you. Right. And they're enjoy all those profits that could have been yours, and all the growth that could have been yours. And you're going to sit there rocking on your porch saying, that should have been me.
Right. Yeah. I wanted to also talk about students, because as we're talking right now, we're talking about business, the learning process, and the language student, in my case, because my community is about learning languages, perfection is the greatest enemy. This idea that I can be a beginner in a language, and no, I can't make mistakes when I'm starting to learn a language. Like, oh no, I shouldn't be making this mistake. It's ludicrous. Put Elon Musk, put Albert Einstein in a Spanish class or French class, they'll be making mistakes left and right. They'll get confused. They'll get mixed up. They'll say things in a weird way. They'll mispronounce words. It's completely normal. But the thing is, like you were saying, the ego, that's the thing. Oh no, like I'm learning this language, but I expect to speak it perfectly as a beginner. It doesn't exist. In a way, what I try to do is motivate students and inspire them to take on a more playful demeanor, to see learning languages as a game. Try to put your ego aside. We're all friends. Nobody's going to make fun of anyone. We're just having fun, and experiment. And we're going to embrace our mistakes. We're going to embrace the little things that don't fit the rustiness, the grammar mistakes, whatever. When we get blocked, when we can't express ourselves, we're going to just embrace that and have fun with it. And we could apply that same principle, to life, have a playful life, to business. I see Elon Musk, and it's like a project, it's a game. Oh, wow, let's go to space. That sounds fun. Let's do it. What do you think about this kind of playful nature? Is it a good way to live? Is it a good way to do business? Do you relate to that?
That's one of my philosophical cornerstones, is that you need to be enjoying it, because otherwise, why do it? And I think that goes into almost any principle, is that you need to enjoy what you do. And when I taught high school, that's something I really tried to impart to my students, because I think in countries like the Czech Republic, that philosophy can be seen as very Protestant. It can be against the grain. When they say, oh, I want a job that pays well. I want a job that's going to have esteem. I'm like, make sure you enjoy those things, because I know a lot of really well-off people who are pretty miserable. And I think sometimes when you do something you don't like and you make large amounts of money, you almost trap yourself, because you've built a lifestyle around this. So it's not like you could just say, hey, I'm doing this and I'm making 6-7 figures, but I would actually rather do competitive figure skating. And then suddenly your life is built up. You have a lifestyle that commands 6 figures a year just to maintain. No, you need to enjoy what you do. Your businesses, they should be fun. They should be enjoyable. They should be challenging, but the true entrepreneur relishes in that challenge. That is one of those entrepreneurial spirits. You need to look at a challenge and smile at it. And it's not a problem. It's not a bad thing. You don't run from it saying, I don't want this. You say, this is a challenge. I need to rise up to this. And if you get enjoyment from it, you're unstoppable, because then all you're going to do is find problems and enjoy rising up to them. You are unstoppable. It's when you're dreaming, you find out you're in a dream, right? Then you have this sandbox approach. You need to enjoy what you do. And I think in our case, you and I, since we have both departed our beloved home country, which, by the way, is a very irresponsible thing to do. It goes against every rule of logic ever that you would say, I don't want to be around people who speak the same language as me. I want to go to a completely different culture than I was brought up in. And I'm going to do all the things I could do here over there. If you're not enjoying that, you're a sick puppy. But I think a lot of that also plays into our successes and the successes of other entrepreneurs as well. And I think I talked about this 2 or 3 chats ago, when we talked about that, breaking down the mental feudalism, the mind state of what you can and can't do, things like that, and picking up against all sense of rationality and jettisoning off to a small country in the middle of Europe. It just defies logic. But also, entrepreneurialism is meant to defy logic as well. And if you enjoy defying that logic, then you are in the exact right place you should be. You should have companies. You should be an entrepreneur. You should have an unnamed podcast where you both have the same name talking to each other every couple of weeks. That is, if nothing else says you are in the right spot, that's the spirit of enjoyment in entrepreneurialism.
I like it. I like it. Something that came to mind right now was the concept of celebrating small victories and connecting that, of course, to the original idea of perfectionism. Sometimes we have our dream and we say, okay, I'm going to be a billionaire or a millionaire. I'm going to have this massive empire. But we forget to enjoy the journey rather than always strive for the destination. And I love the concept of saying, all right, today I'm going to enjoy where I am in my journey. I'm going to celebrate the small victories rather than always feel like I'm falling short of the destination. And for my students, for my audience, okay, you're afraid of speaking. Okay, you're not expressing yourself the way you would like to. Come to class. That's a victory right there, showing up. Introduce yourself to someone in English or in Spanish or in French. That's a victory right there. And along the way, there are hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe, of small little victories that will propel us to our final destination, to our ideal. Whatever situation we're in right now, if I'm struggling in this area of business, or I'd like to reach more people, which is the main thing right now for me, is to reach more people. Now, I could love where I am right now and say, wow, like this is where I am in my biography. This is page, I don't know, 45. All right, cool. Like I'll get to page 100, but I'm at page 45. I'm going to enjoy this page. I'm going to live it and write it at the same time, because we're writing and we're reading our own life story every single second. And I love this idea. I think it's amazing. Yeah, what comes to mind as I say these things?
Small victories are a part of life. And I think we see them and have them without even knowing. And it creates a very interesting psychological approach to the completion of whatever the long-term goal was, because you've been going through something for so long and experiencing it so much and becoming so knowledgeable and battle hardened and all of these things, that by the time you achieve it, the feeling of achievement is almost dulled a little bit, because just that, it's something that you have worked hard and earned, as opposed to, we all say, I would be so much happier if I had $1 million. But that's because we want to have $1 million without putting in the legwork. So if I just snap my fingers and $1 million shows up, that would be me at the happiest point, because it would be completely unadulterated. It wouldn't be tainted by work, sacrifice, growth, divergence, failure, recuperation, things like that. By the time you actually become a millionaire, It's just one of those things that happens. Just like maybe graduating high school, right? We were young and we just say, oh my God, I'm going to be so happy when I'm out of the school. I'm going to be so happy when I graduate. By the time you walk across that stage, you get that diploma, you're like, yeah, good, yeah, I'm done. Thank you. Thank you. You're almost indignant about it.
And then you spend your life reminiscing.
Yeah.
But
Because you went through the process.
Right.
Mark Twain, I love this. He refers to classic literature as books that no one wants to read, but everyone wants to have read. And I think that a lot of times is a lot of the culture we put ourselves in when it comes to perfection and those little victories along the way. And I think that's why those little victories are so savory, because you do need to celebrate along the way. And you do need to potentially itemize every task with a victory at hand. What do they say? One step in front of the other, right? One foot in front of the other. And when it comes to that idea, let me serve it back to you. What goals do you give yourself? What little victories do you have?
Every single day, every single week, I set out my goals. I have my long-term, I have my daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals, yearly goals, life goals. I'm actually reading right now a very good book, one of the classics. I'm sure you know it, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Right now, I'm trying to internalize a lot of these principles. And so living, having values, having principles, and living according to those principles, and then having the vision that supports that. So it's instead of saying, oh, I want to achieve this, I want to be a person that embodies, that accomplishes these things. It's a very subtle difference. But let's say instead of I want $1,000,000, I want to be a millionaire. There's a subtle difference there. One of them is the $1,000,000 is the focus, the thing that I obtain. In the second iteration of that, it's I want to be the person that owns $1,000,000 or $1,000,000,000 or a business or an empire, whatever it is. And so making it focused on the principles. And so to answer your question in a more concrete fashion, I'd say short term is to build my schools and harnessing the power of teaching and of being able to capture all of that and offer it to my community. Down the line, midterm to long term would be to keep building my personal brand. Like I said, to serve, to reach millions of people. That's the goal, because I want to have a positive impact. I know I have, like I was saying earlier, I know I have a lot to give. I want to give it, and I'm willing to give it, and I'll give it to whoever is out there, whoever wants to take what I have to offer. I'll give it to them, and I want to be able to reach those people, and I want to have a positive impact. My horizon to reach as many people as possible, millions, maybe even billions, you never know, and to use my talents, because our talents are gifts that we have. We don't know why we have them. We just were born with them, maybe, or circumstances allowed us to have our talents, and to not use our talents. I think that's the biggest waste right there. So I want to live a life of purpose and to reach people and use my gifts along the way.
Perfect, man. That sounds just right. That sounds just right. And I said, I do think we all, and it's for one reason or another, have something that we can offer the world, whether it be sometimes it's something we're good at. Sometimes it might be a skill that we've developed one way or another. Sometimes it might be an experience that we've been through, be it good or bad, that we can actually turn into a helpful item. Life gives you so many tools, and it gives you tools that you may not have even asked for, but somehow you can take those tools and transform them with a little bit of entrepreneurialism, with a little bit of a philosophy on growth and development and things like that. You can turn these experiences, these tools, these skills you wouldn't even think of having, into juggernauts, into these great things. Whether maybe you have the ability to be very analytical. Maybe you are a good communicator. Maybe you like to build. You're just one of those natural builders, both literally and figuratively. And these can come from places that it doesn't have to be a PhD. It doesn't have to be some higher education brand. It can be just from something that you were picking up along the way. In my case, I'm not going to go and flatter myself about skill sets, but I'm very good at communicating with people, with lots of people. It's always been something I've been good with. And a lot of that came from the fact that I was in daycares from a year in. And because both my parents were working middle class, I had to be somewhere. They were both at work. And so I was always in a room or several rooms with 15, 16, 17 other kids. And we had the whole day just to interact. And you think nothing of it when you're doing it. You think nothing of it when you're growing up. But suddenly, when you're developing a business that involves a lot of communication and being able to convey a lot of information, suddenly you say, wait a minute, I can talk to swaths of people and have zero problem doing so. Where did that come from? Did it come from? And so you could almost play a little game with yourself, a little psychological game, and kind of take your strengths and see if you can comb through past events and see maybe where they started taking shape and what weird personal element came along that helped you develop those skills. It's a really cool way of introspection and to learn about yourself and also to dissect where your skill sets lie and how you can apply those into an entrepreneurial world. Because remember, you don't have to be a Swiss Army knife to be an entrepreneur. You just have to be able to build, construct, and enjoy the time you have doing it. There's other people who have other skills. None of my companies are just me by myself. They would be terrible companies if they were. The Visa company has about 7 people. The TEFL school has about 8 people right now working on it. And these are all people who have skills that are very different from mine. I love to talk. I love to communicate. I'm terrible with tech. I'm terrible with technology, modern stuff like that. QR codes make me shiver. If I see a restaurant with QR codes, I walk across the street and get myself a nice flat menu. So that's a little bit of an introspection. If you are looking to get into entrepreneurialism, start there.
Wait, yeah, I like that. I love that. Yeah, exactly. Just seeing it, analyzing your story. That's it. You're just going through your story and saying what conditions, what situations, what gifts, because every experience, every situation, life situation, was a gift. And then, like you were saying, connecting the dot thing, saying this experience gave me this skill. This experience gave me this insight. And they all lead somewhere. And the world is so big. It's also very small in many ways, but it's so big in the possibilities and the value that we can give. And so, yeah, I love those words. I think that's absolutely amazing. So David, why don't we can wrap up, but where can people find you? Tell us a little bit about where you want people to go to connect with you.
All right. Of course, my latest brand is an online TEFL certification school called TEFLPros. You can find us at www.teflpros.com. And the idea about that is if you would like to start a new chapter of your life as an English teacher, the same way I did, the same way my esteemed colleague here did as well, there's a vast market and plenty of companies that are looking for certified teachers. And the cool thing about it, and this is something that I didn't even know what TEFL was when I first signed up. I learned what TEFL was maybe 24 hours before I signed up for a course. You do not need to have a background in education. You do not need to have a college degree. You do not have to have anything other than general cognitive ability to speak English and a desire to learn and to grow. My brand is globally accredited. We are accepted around the world and it's purely online. And also you can take the course at your leisure. So it's not a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday kind of thing. You log in when you want to. If you drop the kids off and want to take the course during the day, if you work during the day and you want to take the course at night, if you want to light a candle and pour a glass of wine and do a Friday night module section or 2, we work with you, but you also get human interaction. You'll be able to speak with me directly. We can wax philosophy together. I help you with career planning, and we have a great staff as well. So check it out at www.teflpros.com. We've been putting a lot of cool work into this.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, definitely. And everyone who was listening who would like to improve their language skills, whether it's English, Spanish, or French, they know me here every single day recording and sharing the wisdom. So reach out, join the community, take your language skills to the next level. It's a great way to work on yourself holistically, your thought process, but also communication skills and social skills, cultural skills. So it's absolutely amazing. It's what I love to do. And this passion it's contagious. That's why I love talking to you, Dave. Your passion for life, for business, is so contagious. I just feel full of energy every single time we speak. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure talking to you, man. I honestly could not think of a better way to end the week. So thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful one as too.
You too, brother. Take care, man. See ya.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.